The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than most cities. Floating platforms held delegates from over 200 different worlds. The air buzzed with translation devices working in hundreds of languages. At the center of it all sat the massive voting crystal, glowing blue as it waited for the final decision. Tai-Ho Kim sat in the human section, his hands folded on the table. He had been Earth's voice in this place for 15 years. Today would be his last day here. He knew it, even if nobody else did yet. Next to him, Minji Park checked her datapad. The former fleet commander kept track of every vote, every alliance, every betrayal. Her military training made her see patterns others missed. Today's pattern was clear. Humanity was about to lose badly. On Tai-Ho's other side, Sahi Choi reviewed trade numbers one last time. As the human economic advisor, she knew exactly how much this vote would cost. Not just for humans, but for everyone. The aliens just didn't know it yet. The vote on Resolution 847 Alpha will now begin, announced the council speaker. The tall, blue-skinned Zentari looked down at the humans with obvious dislike. All those in favor of limiting human expansion and resource access, cast your vote now. The voting crystal began to glow. Red lights appeared like stars across the Great Hall. One after another, alien delegates pressed their voting buttons. The Vorthan Empire voted yes. The Kalian Federation voted yes. The Spiral Arm Alliance voted yes. Tai-Ho watched without emotion. He had expected this. Humans had been too successful, too fast. In just 50 years, they had built colonies on 200 worlds. They had created trade routes that made everyone rich. They had solved problems that had puzzled alien scientists for centuries, and that scared the other species. The Terran delegation may cast their vote, the speaker said with a sneer. Tai-Ho pressed the no button. A single green light appeared in the sea of red. Two other small lights joined it, the Epsilon Miners and the Silicon Valley Collective. Both were tiny species that most aliens ignored. The vote is complete, the speaker announced. Resolution 847 Alpha passes. 127 votes in favor, 3 against. Humanity's expansion beyond the outer rim is now forbidden. Human resource extraction is limited to 50% of current levels. Human trade vessels require special permits for travel outside designated zones. Cheers echoed through the hall. The big alien empires were happy. They had put the upstart humans in their place. Several delegates were already making jokes about how humans would crawl back begging for mercy within a year. Tai-Ho stood up slowly. The hall grew quiet as the human ambassador walked to the speaking platform. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Honored delegates, Tai-Ho began, his voice calm and clear. For 50 years, humanity has been proud to serve alongside you in this great council. We have shared our knowledge. We have opened our worlds to trade. We have worked together to build a better galaxy. Some aliens nodded. The nice words made them feel good about what they had just done. However, Tai-Ho continued, today's vote shows us that we are not welcome as equal partners. You see us as a threat to be contained, not allies to be trusted. The Zentari speaker waved a dismissive hand. Ambassador Kim, surely you understand. This is for the good of galactic stability. Humans expand too fast. You take too many resources. This will help everyone. Tai-Ho smiled sadly. I understand perfectly, honored speaker. That is why I must inform this council that humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective in 30 standard cycles. The hall erupted. Aliens jumped to their feet, shouting in dozens of languages. Some laughed, others looked angry. A few seemed shocked. You cannot be serious. The speaker roared over the noise. Humans need the council more than the council needs humans. Perhaps, Tai-Ho said quietly, but somehow his voice carried to every corner of the great hall. We will find out, won't we? The Vorthan ambassador stood up, his 6 arms waving dramatically. This is a child's tantrum. Where will you go? What will you do without access to our markets, our technology, our protection? Minji Park whispered something to Tai-Ho. He nodded and spoke again. We will return to human space and take care of our own people. We will maintain our existing trade relationships with any species that wishes to continue them. But we will no longer be bound by council rules that treat us as second-class citizens. Good riddance, shouted someone from the Kellyan section. We managed fine before humans arrived. We'll manage fine after they leave. More cheers erupted. The aliens were celebrating like they had won a great victory. Sahi Choi stood and handed Taiho a data crystal. He held it up for all to see. This contains a complete list of all human personnel, facilities, and operations that will be withdrawn from council space. We will honor all existing contracts until their completion dates. After that, he shrugged. You will need to find other solutions. The Zentari speaker grabbed the crystal and plugged it into the main display. Numbers and charts filled the massive screens around the hall. For a moment there was silence as the aliens read, then nervous whispers began to spread. Surely this list is incomplete, the speaker said, his voice less confident than before. No, honored speaker, that list is complete. Every human technician maintaining your space stations. Every human farmer growing food for your worlds. Every human engineer keeping your networks running. Every human trader carrying goods between. Your systems, all of them will return to human space. The whispers grew louder. Some aliens were pointing at specific items on the list, looking worried. You're bluffing, said the Vorthan ambassador, but he didn't sound sure anymore. We never bluff, Taiho replied. Ask anyone who has ever negotiated with humans. We say what we mean and we do what we say. He turned to face the entire council one last time. Honored delegates, it has been our honor to serve with you. We wish you well in your future endeavors. The first transport ships will begin evacuation procedures tomorrow. Taiho bowed politely and walked back to his seat. Minji and Sahi gathered their belongings. As the three humans prepared to leave, the great hall buzzed with confused conversations. Some aliens were still celebrating. Others were studying the withdrawal list with growing concern. A few were starting to ask uncomfortable questions about what exactly humans had been doing in their territories. As they reached the exit, Taiho heard the Zentari speaker calling for order, trying to restore calm to the chaos. But the damage was done. The vote had been cast. The decision was made. Humanity was going home. Kyungwon Lee stood in the command center of New Geneva Station, watching hundreds of screens that showed human colonies across the galaxy. Each screen displayed evacuation progress, ship schedules, and population counts. As Director of Human Colonial Administration, he was managing the biggest population movement in galactic history. Sir, the transport fleet from Kepler 442 has arrived at New Bisan Colony, reported his assistant. They can begin loading the agricultural equipment. Tomorrow, Kyungwon nodded and checked his list. New Bisan was one of the major food production worlds. It supplied grain and vegetables to 15 different alien systems. After the humans left, those systems would need to find new food sources quickly. What about the communication relay on Sector 7? He asked. Yeji Nam's team is handling that. Personally. She says they need 3 more days to safely shut down the main transmitter. 3 days. Kyungwon shook his head. The aliens had no idea what was coming. When that relay went dark, 12-star systems would lose contact with each other. The aliens thought communication just happened by magic. They didn't know about the thousands of human technicians who kept the networks running every single day. On the other side of the galaxy, Yeji Nam floated in zero gravity inside communication. Relay Station Delta 7, she wore a maintenance suit and carried tools that most aliens had never seen before. Around her, massive transmission arrays hummed with power, sending messages between distant worlds. Careful with that coupling, she told her team over the radio. If we disconnect it wrong, the feedback could damage the alien receivers. Yeji had built this relay station 8 years ago. Back then, the alien governments had paid humans to solve their communication problems. The different species used different technologies that didn't work well together. Humans had figured out how to make them all talk to each other. Now the aliens thought they didn't need humans anymore. They would learn differently soon enough. Team leader, we're getting angry calls from the Vorthan Empire, said Jinwoo, her second in command. They want to know why we're shutting down their communication hub. Yeji laughed bitterly. Tell them to read the withdrawal notice. We're taking our equipment home. But this whole station belongs to them. The station does. The transmitter array, the processing computers, the signal boosters, and the translation matrix all belong to us. Without those, they have a very expensive empty box floating in space. She looked through the transparent aluminum window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, alien politicians were probably having meetings about the human problem. They still thought this was just about territory and resources. They didn't understand that humans had become the invisible foundation that held their civilization together. Captain Minho Jang piloted his transport ship New Seoul through the asteroid field around Mining Station Omega-12. His ship was just one of thousands involved in the Great Evacuation. Every day, more human ships arrived to pick up people and equipment from colonies across the galaxy. New Seoul to Omega-12 control, he called on the radio. Ready to begin loading procedure. Copy that, New Seoul. Bay 7 is open and waiting. Minho guided his ship into the docking bay. Through the front window, he could see human miners and their families waiting with their belongings. Many looked sad to leave. They had built good lives on these asteroid colonies, but the Galactic Council had made their choice clear. Humans weren't welcome as equals. Captain, called his first officer, Xianho, the station administrator wants to speak with you. A few minutes later, a tall alien with purple skin and 4 eyes met Minho at the airlock. The administrator looked nervous. Captain Jang, surely there's been some mistake, the alien said. Our mining operation depends on human workers. They know how to extract the rare metals we need. Without them, we'll have to shut down, Minho shrugged. Take it up with the Galactic Council. They're the ones who voted to restrict human activities. But that was about expansion and resource limits. Nobody said anything about existing operations. Read the fine print, Minho replied. The resolution restricts human resource extraction by 50%. Our people calculated that it's more efficient to withdraw completely than to work under those limits. The administrator's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. You can't just leave. We have contracts, which we're honoring. The contracts say either party can terminate with 30 days' notice. We gave notice yesterday. As Minho watched the alien panic, he felt a little sorry for him. The administrator was just a middle manager trying to keep his operation running. He probably hadn't even voted on the resolution. But he would pay the price for his government's mistakes. Back on New Geneva Station, Kyungwon received reports from across human space. The evacuation was going better than expected, but it was revealing just how deep human involvement went in galactic society. Sir, we've got a problem on Kepler 186, his assistant reported. The humans there were running the entire atmospheric processing system. The alien government is begging them to stay until they can train replacements. What did our people tell them? That training takes 2 years minimum. The aliens have 30 days. Kyungwon pulled up the file on Kepler 186. It was a marginal world that needed constant atmospheric adjustment to stay habitable. Without the processing system, the planet would become unlivable within 6 months. Any word from the Galactic Council? They sent a message asking for a reasonable transition period. Ambassador Kim told them that reasonable would have been not passing the resolution in the first place. Good for Taiho, Kyungwon thought. The aliens had made their bed. Now they could sleep in it. His assistant continued reading reports. The Spiral Arm Alliance is asking about the shipping insurance system. Apparently 90% of interstellar cargo was insured through human companies. And our insurance division is canceling all policies in council space, effective immediately, Kyungwon smiled grimly. Without insurance, trade between alien worlds would become much more expensive and risky. Some ships might stop flying altogether, rather than risk bankruptcy from piracy or accidents. What about the Zentari Confederation? They're having problems with their space elevators. Turns out human engineers designed the control systems. Without maintenance, the elevators could collapse. One by one, the reports came in. Humans weren't just leaving. They were taking with them the knowledge, systems, and infrastructure that had made modern galactic civilization possible. The aliens had lived with these systems for so long that they forgot humans had built them. On Mining Station Omega-12, Captain Minho finished loading the last human family onto his ship. As the new soul undocked and flew away, he looked back. At the station, already, he could see problems starting. Emergency lights were flashing in the mining section where automated systems had begun to fail. Without human supervision, the aliens would figure out how to fix those problems eventually. Or maybe they wouldn't. That was their choice now. Yaji-Nam sealed the last access panel on Communication Relay Delta 7. The powerful transmitter arrays were now silent. Around the galaxy, alien worlds that had been talking to each other for decades suddenly found themselves alone in the dark. All teams, report status, she called on her radio. Team 2 ready for departure. Team 3 packed and sealed. Team 4 completing final shutdown. In a few hours, they would board their transport ship and head for human space. Behind them, they would leave a communication network that was already beginning to fragment without human maintenance. Kyungwon Lee turned off the screens in his command center. Phase 1 of the evacuation was complete. Human civilians were safely on their way home. Phase 2 would begin tomorrow, pulling out the technical staff, who kept alien worlds running. The aliens still thought this was about pride and politics. They had no idea that their entire civilization was about to collapse, but they would learn soon enough. 60 days had passed since the humans left. Captain Dong-Yoon Yu guided his merchant ship Seoul Express through what used to be the busiest trade route in the galaxy. Now the space lanes were almost empty. His ship was one of the last human vessels still operating in alien space. They were making final delivery runs, honoring contracts that ended this week. After that, even the private human traders would return home. "Captain, we're getting another distress call," said his navigator Jahoon. "That's the 5th one today." Dong-Yoon checked his scanner. A Vorthan cargo ship was drifting dead in space, its engines silent. 60 days ago, that ship would have been rescued within hours by the emergency response network. Now there was nobody to answer the call. "Are we going to help them?" Jihoon asked. Dong-Yoon thought about it. The Vorthan Empire had voted enthusiastically to restrict human activities. Their delegates had cheered when the resolution passed. But the crew on that cargo ship were just ordinary workers trying to make a living. "Send them a message," he decided. "Tell them we'll tow them to the nearest station. But after this week, they're on their own." On the agricultural world of New Busan, the automated farms were starting to fail. Yoonji Kim walked through fields of dying crops, checking sensors that hadn't been calibrated properly since the humans left. She was supposed to be gone already, but the local alien government had begged her to stay just a few more days. "The grain processor is making strange noises again," reported Yongsik, one of the few remaining human technicians. "The aliens tried to fix it themselves, but they made it worse," Yoonji sighed. New Bizan fed 15 star systems. When these farms failed completely, millions of aliens would go hungry. But she couldn't stay forever. Her family was waiting for her in human space. "Show me the processor," she said. They walked to the massive facility where grain was sorted, cleaned and packaged for shipment. Inside, alien workers stood around helplessly while expensive machinery made grinding sounds that meant expensive. Parts were breaking. The alien supervisor, an insect-like creature named Zix442, hurried over when he saw Yoonji. "Thank the stars you're here. We tried to follow the maintenance manual, but nothing works right." Yoonji looked at the manual they were using. It was written in basic galactic, but it was clearly a simplified version. The real maintenance procedures were much more complex and required understanding of systems the aliens had never learned about. "This manual is for emergency repairs only," she explained. "The full procedures are in the human technical database." "Can you give us access to that database?" "I don't have authority to do that. Besides, it would take months to train your people on the proper procedures." Zix 442's compound eyes reflected his desperation. How long can the farms keep running without proper maintenance? Yunji did quick calculations in her head. Maybe 3 months. After that, you'll start losing entire crops. The alien supervisor made a sound that might have been crying in space. Near the old communication relay stations, Dr. Neon Shin was collecting scientific equipment from the research station New Horizon. As one of the leading experts on interstellar communication, she had spent years studying how different alien technologies could work together. Doctor, the Zentari government is offering us triple payment to keep the relay network running, said. Her assistant, Wujin Neon, didn't look up from her work. Not our problem anymore, they voted us out, remember? Through the station's windows, she could see the massive relay array that had connected this sector to the rest of the galaxy. It had been dark for 2 weeks now. 12 star systems were now isolated from each other, unable to send even simple messages. The aliens keep calling us, Wujin continued. They say they're willing to negotiate. Negotiate what? The Galactic Council vote was final. They made their choice. Neon finished packing the last of their quantum communication equipment. This technology was 20 years ahead of anything the aliens had developed. Without it, they would be back to using primitive radio signals that took years to travel between stars. Doctor, look at this, Wujin called from the communication console. We're picking up emergency broadcasts from all over the sector. Neon walked over and put on headphones. The broadcasts were a mixture of panic and confusion. Ships were lost without navigation updates. Space stations were calling for help with system failures. Planetary governments were asking why their messages weren't getting through to other worlds. It's getting worse every day, Wujin observed. This is just the beginning, Neon replied. Wait until the economic systems start failing. On the industrial world of Kepler 442, the space elevators that connected the planet to orbital facilities were developing serious problems. The control systems that managed the massive cables were designed by human engineers. Without proper maintenance, the elevators could collapse, killing thousands and cutting the planet off from space trade. Local officials had tried to hire alien engineers to fix the problems, but none of them understood the human-designed systems. The control software was too advanced, and the safety protocols were written in technical language that didn't translate well. Governor Helix 9, a crystalline being who ruled the planet, sent urgent messages to every human ship in the system. Most didn't respond. The few that did gave the same answer. Contact your government. They voted to restrict human activities. Captain Dongyun finished his last delivery run and prepared to leave alien space forever. As the Seoul Express turned toward human territory, he received dozens of messages from alien traders begging him to stay. They offered huge payments, but he ignored them all. Captain, why aren't we taking those contracts? Asked Ji-hoon. Some of them are offering 10 times the normal rate. Because this isn't about money, Dongyun replied. It's about respect. They didn't respect us when they had the chance. Now they want to buy our help like we're mercenaries. The Seoul Express jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind a galaxy that was starting to understand its mistakes. Back on New Bisun, Yoonji Kim finished her final inspection of the agricultural systems. She had done everything she could to keep them running a little longer, but without human expertise, failure was inevitable. As her transport ship prepared for departure, she looked down at the planet from orbit. The farms that had fed millions were already showing signs of neglect. In a few months, this world would change from a food producer to a world that needed food aid. Any regrets? Asked the ship's captain. Yoonji thought about all the alien friends she was leaving behind. Good people who would suffer because their governments had made stupid decisions. I regret that it came to this, she said finally. But they made their choice. Now they have to live with it. Dr. Neon Shin's research ship was the last human vessel to leave the communication relay sector. As they jumped to hyperspace, the relay stations went completely dark. 12 star systems that had been connected for 50 years were now alone in the vast darkness of space on their way home. They passed through sectors where the effects of human withdrawal were becoming visible. Trade routes were empty, emergency beacons blinked unanswered. Space stations drifted without maintenance. The galaxy was learning what it meant to live without humans. And the lesson was harder than anyone had expected. The aliens had thought humans were just another species they could push around. They were discovering that humans had been the invisible foundation that held their civilization together. Now that foundation was gone and everything was starting to crumble. 4 months after the humans left, the galaxy was dying. Sungjin-Oh sat in the command center of the human rescue vessel, Good Hope, listening to distress calls that came from across alien space. As coordinator for human emergency response, he had never heard so many cries for help. "Sir, we're getting reports of a complete system failure on Vorthen Station 7, reported his communications officer, Minsu. Their life support is failing. They're asking for immediate evacuation." Sungjin checked his orders. Humanity had officially withdrawn from galactic affairs. They were not supposed to help alien governments that had voted against them. But the people on that station were just civilians. "How many people?" he asked. 50,000, mostly families and children. Sungjin closed his eyes. 50,000 lives. On Earth, economic analyst Hiring Kong was working late again, studying reports that painted a picture of total galactic collapse. Her office was filled with charts, graphs, and data streams showing the destruction of everything the aliens had built. "The Zentari economy dropped another 20% this week," she told her assistant Yemen. "Their currency is almost worthless now." "What about the Spiral Arm Alliance?" "Worse. 3 of their member worlds have declared bankruptcy. Their trade network has collapsed completely." Hiren pulled up a galaxy-wide economic map. 4 months ago, it had been mostly green, showing healthy trade and growth. Now it was a sea of red warning indicators. Entire sectors had gone dark as economic activity ground to a halt. "The aliens still don't understand what's happening," she said. "They think this is temporary. They believe they can fix it without." Yusuf, but Hiren knew better. She had helped design many of the economic systems that were now failing. The aliens didn't just need human goods and services. They needed human knowledge, human systems, and human innovation to keep their civilization. Running. Her computer chimed with a new message. It was from the Galactic Council, marked Urgent Highest Priority. "They want a meeting," she told Yemen. "They're offering to discuss terms for human return. Are we going to respond?" Hiren deleted the message. They had their chance to discuss terms 4 months ago. On the agricultural world of New Bizen, the farms that had once fed 15 star systems were now wastelands. Without human maintenance, the automated systems had failed completely. Crops rotted in the fields. Processing facilities stood empty. And broken. Governor Zix 442 walked through the ruins of what had been the galaxy's most productive food center. His people were already rationing food. Within 2 months, they would face real starvation. "Any word from the human settlements?" he asked his aide. "They're not answering our calls. The closest human colony is only 2 days away, but they won't respond to our messages." Zix 442 had voted for Resolution 847 Alpha. He had believed the humans were taking too many resources, growing too fast. Now he realized that humans weren't taking from the galaxy, they were giving to it. Everything they took out, they put back in greater measure, but this realization came too late. In space, Medical Officer Jiwan Beek commanded the human hospital ship Mercy. She and her crew had been responding to medical emergencies across the galaxy, saving lives regardless of politics. Today they were heading to a refugee camp where displaced aliens needed urgent care. "Doctor, the Galactic Council is demanding that we stop our medical missions," reported her nurse, Yunsu. "They say we're violating the withdrawal agreement." Ji-Wan looked up from her patient files. "Are we in human space or alien space?" "Technically, we're in neutral territory." "Then we continue our mission." "The withdrawal agreement says we won't operate in council space. It doesn't say we can't help refugees who come to us." The Mercy was treating patients from 6 different species. All of them were refugees from worlds where human-designed infrastructure had failed. Some had lost their homes when space habitats lost life support. Others were fleeing planets where food distribution systems had collapsed. "Doctor, you should see this," Yunsu called from the communication station. "We're getting medical emergency calls from across the galaxy. The aliens are begging for our help." Yuan read through the messages. Hospitals on a dozen worlds were running out of medicine that had been manufactured in human space. Medical equipment was breaking down without human technicians to maintain it. Entire planets were facing health crises. "Send the same response to all of them," she instructed. "We're willing to help, but only if they come to neutral space. We won't enter Council territory." Back on the Good Hope, Sungjin-O made a difficult decision. The people on Vorthen Station 7 were dying. His government had ordered him not to help alien authorities, but they had said nothing about helping civilians. "Prepare for emergency rescue mission," he ordered. "We're going to save those people." "Sir, that could cause a diplomatic incident," warned Minsu. "Let it. I won't let 50,000 people die because their government was stupid." The Good Hope jumped to hyperspace, racing toward the failing station. It would take 8 hours to reach them. Sungjin hoped they had 8 hours left. On Earth, Hyorin Kong received an urgent call from the president's office. The alien crisis was getting worse every day, and humanity needed to decide how to respond. "The economic data is clear," she told the President's Council. "Galactic civilization is collapsing. Without human systems, their entire economy will fail within 6 months. Are they finally admitting they need us?" asked the Defense Secretary. "Some are. But the Galactic Council is still officially claiming this is a temporary problem. They're telling their people that human withdrawal was planned and beneficial." The President leaned forward. "What about the refugee situation?" "Getting worse every day. Millions of aliens are fleeing failed worlds. Some are trying to reach human space asking for asylum. And our recommendation?" Hyorin had been thinking about this for weeks. "We help the refugees. We continue medical missions. But we don't negotiate with the Galactic Council until they admit they were wrong and ask properly for our help." Meanwhile, in the ruins of Communication Relay Station Delta 7, a team of alien engineers tried desperately to restart the massive transmitter array. They had been working for weeks, but nothing they did could make the human-designed systems work. "Try rerouting power through the secondary array," suggested Chief Engineer Vec 228. "We already tried that. The quantum processors won't activate without the master control codes. Can't we hack them? The security is too advanced. It would take years to break." Around them, the station was falling apart. Without human maintenance, critical systems were failing one by one. Soon the station would be completely dead, leaving this sector of space permanently isolated. The aliens were learning a hard truth. It's easy to destroy something, but much harder to rebuild it. The humans had spent 50 years carefully building systems that worked across hundreds of different species and cultures. The aliens had destroyed those relationships in a single vote on Vorthen Station 7. The final life support systems were failing when the Good Hope arrived. Sungjin's crew worked frantically to evacuate civilians, saving as many lives as possible. They managed to rescue 47,000 people before the station finally died. As the Good Hope carried the refugees to safety, Sungjin received angry messages from the Vorthen government. They demanded he return their citizens immediately. "Tell them their citizens are now under human protection," he replied. "If they want them back, they can negotiate through proper diplomatic channels." Dr. Jawan Beek's hospital ship was overwhelmed with patients. Refugee camps across neutral space were filling with aliens whose worlds had become unlivable. The human medical corps was doing everything they could, but there were too many people and not enough resources. "We need more ships," Yunsu reported. "More doctors, more medicine, more everything. Send a request to Earth," Jawan decided. "Ask for a full medical fleet. This is becoming a humanitarian crisis." Back on Earth, Hyorin Kong watched the economic collapse accelerate. The mathematical models she had helped create were predicting total systemic failure within months. The aliens had built their civilization on a foundation of human expertise. When humans left, that foundation cracked and everything built on top came crashing down. Her computer showed messages from alien governments offering massive payments for human help. Some offered entire star systems. Others promised to make humans equal partners in galactic government, but it was too late for easy solutions. The damage was done. Galactic civilization was falling apart, and only humans had the knowledge to put it back together. The question now was whether humanity would help rebuild or let the aliens learn their lesson the hard way. The galaxy was about to find out what happened when you bit the hand that fed you. 8 months after humanity left, Ambassador Taiho Kim stood again in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. But this time, everything was different. The hall was half empty. Many alien governments had collapsed and could no longer afford to send delegates. The voting crystal at the center was cracked and dim. Even the translation systems worked poorly without human maintenance. Most importantly, Taiho was no longer here as a member of the council. He was Earth's special envoy for alien relations, invited to hear what the surviving alien governments had to say. Honored Ambassador Kim, began Acting Speaker Vel 339, a nervous Centauri who had replaced the previous speaker after his government fell. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Taiho nodded politely but said nothing. Around him, the remaining alien delegates looked desperate. Many had dark circles under their eyes. Some appeared to have lost weight. The confident, arrogant aliens who had voted against humanity 8 months ago were gone, replaced by broken leaders of dying civilizations on Earth. Minji Park coordinated the largest humanitarian operation in galactic history. Human ships were spread across neutral space, running refugee camps and medical stations for millions of displaced aliens. It was a massive effort that stretched human resources to their limits. Status report, she called as she entered the Crisis Command Center. Refugee camps are at 200% capacity, reported Captain Ciala, her logistics coordinator. We have 3 million aliens in human care, with more arriving every day. What about supplies? We're managing, but barely. The medical ships need more medicine. The food distribution centers are running low. And we need more ships for rescue operations. Minji studied the tactical display showing human operations across the galaxy. Red dots marked failed alien worlds. Blue dots showed human refugee camps. The red dots outnumbered the blue ones 10-1. Any word from the Galactic Council meeting? Ambassador Kim is still listening to their proposals, but early reports suggest they're not offering anything meaningful. Back in the council hall, Taiho listened as alien leader after alien leader stood up to speak. Each told the same story. Their civilization was collapsing, their people were suffering, and they needed human help. The Kellyan Federation formally requests immediate human assistance with our agricultural crisis. Announced Premier Zol 882, we're willing to pay any price. The Vorthan Empire asks for help with our communication networks. Added General Kex 445. Our military cannot coordinate without proper communications. The Spiral Arm Alliance needs human engineers to restart our industrial facilities, said Governor Plex-221. One by one, they made their requests. Some offered money, others offered territory. A few even offered to make humans full partners in their governments, but none of them addressed the real issue. Finally, Taiho stood up, the hall fell silent. Honored delegates, he began, his voice calm and steady. I have listened to your requests. You want human help with your failing systems. You offer payments and partnerships. But you're missing something important. The aliens leaned forward, desperate to hear what they needed to do. You haven't apologized. The silence stretched on. Some aliens looked confused. Others seemed angry. A few appeared to understand. 8 months ago, you voted to treat humanity as a threat to be contained, Taiho continued. You celebrated when you passed Resolution 847 Alpha. You cheered when we announced our withdrawal. You called us ungrateful children throwing a tantrum. Acting Speaker Vel 339 shifted uncomfortably. Ambassador Kim, surely we can move past old disagreements. The galaxy faces a crisis that affects everyone. Yes, it does. A crisis caused by your arrogance and prejudice. You didn't want humans as equal partners. You wanted us as useful servants who would stay in our place and never challenge your authority. Taiho walked to the center of the hall, where the broken voting crystal sat dark and silent. This crisis isn't a natural disaster. It's not caused by war or plague or cosmic accident. It's caused by your decision to reject the people who were keeping your civilization running. On the human hospital ship Mercy, Dr. Jiwan Beek treated her 10,000th refugee patient. An elderly Zentari male who had lost everything when his home station failed. His family was dead. His life savings were worthless. He had only the clothes he wore when human rescuers pulled him from a dying ship. "Thank you," the old alien whispered in broken human language. "Your people very kind. Save us when our own governments cannot." Jiwan smiled sadly. "We help because it's right, not because it's profitable." The Zentari patient looked confused. "But we voted against you. Our government said humans were dangerous. Why do you help us?" "Because you're not your government. You're just a person who needs help. That's enough for us." Across the refugee camps, similar conversations were happening every day. Ordinary aliens were meeting humans for the first time, discovering that the scary, aggressive species their governments had warned them about were actually the most generous people in the galaxy. Back in the council hall, Premier Zol 882 of the Kellyan Federation finally stood up. He was an old alien who had voted for the original resolution. Now his government was bankrupt and his people were starving. "Ambassador Kim," he said slowly, "the Kellyan Federation apologizes. We were wrong. We acted from fear and prejudice. We treated humanity unfairly, and we're paying the price for our mistakes." A murmur ran through the hall. It was the first real apology anyone had offered. Taiho nodded. "Thank you, Premier." "That's a start." General Kex 445 of the Vorthan Empire stood up next. "The Vorthan Empire also apologizes. We didn't understand how much we depended on human expertise. We thought we were strong enough to manage alone. We were wrong." One by one, other delegates began to offer apologies. Some sounded genuine. Others seemed forced, desperate attempts to get human help. But they were apologizing. Acting Speaker Vel 339 was one of the last to speak. "The Galactic Council formally apologizes to humanity for the passage of Resolution 847 Alpha. We acknowledge that our decision was based on fear rather than wisdom. We humbly request that humanity consider returning to galactic society." Taiho listened to it all without expression. When the last apology was finished, he spoke again. "Thank you for your apologies. Some sound more genuine than others, but I accept them all. However, apologies alone are not enough." The aliens looked confused again. "Humanity will not return to the old system. We will not rejoin the Galactic Council as junior members who can be voted down whenever you feel threatened by our success. If we work together again, it will be as equals or not at all." What do you propose?" asked Premier Zol 882, a new system. "A voluntary alliance where each species maintains its sovereignty but cooperates on common challenges. No species gets to vote on what another species can or cannot do. No restrictions on expansion or resource access based on fear and jealousy." The aliens whispered among themselves. Some looked interested. Others seemed worried about losing their authority. "And if we agree to this new system?" asked General Kex 445. "Then humanity will consider sharing our expertise again. We'll help rebuild what was broken. We'll restore the communication networks, fix the agricultural systems, and restart the economic engines that keep your worlds running." "And if we don't agree?" Taiho shrugged. "Then you'll continue managing on your own. We'll keep helping refugees and providing medical aid because that's who we are. But we won't rebuild your governments or your economies. You'll have to figure that out yourselves." On Earth, Sahi Choi was preparing trade agreements for the new system Taiho was proposing. Instead of the old council structure where human activity was restricted and controlled, the new agreements would be bilateral deals between humanity and individual species. The early responses are encouraging, she told her assistant Dongsik. 12 species have already agreed to the new framework. They're desperate enough to accept human equality. What about the major powers? Still thinking about it. They're used to being in charge. It's hard for them to accept that they need us more than we need them. Back on the Mercy, Dr. Jawan received word that Earth was sending a full medical fleet to help with the refugee crisis. 20 hospital ships, complete with doctors, nurses, and medical supplies. It was the largest humanitarian mission in human history. Why is Earth doing this? Asked her Zentari patient. Your people gain nothing from helping us. Huan thought about how to explain human nature to an alien who had been taught to fear humanity. We help because we can. Because it's right. Because when people are suffering, you don't ask who they voted for or what their government did. You just help. The old Zentari was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. I think I understand now why the galaxy collapsed without you. It wasn't just your technology or your systems, it was your hearts. You care about people even? People who hurt you. As the council session ended, Taiho prepared to return to Earth with the aliens' response. Some species had agreed to the new framework immediately. Others wanted time to think. A few still believed they could rebuild. Without human help, time would tell which choice was wise, but one thing was clear, the old galaxy was dead. Whatever came next would be built on new foundations, with humanity as architects rather than servants. The question was whether the aliens were wise enough to accept that reality. 1 year after humanity left the Galactic Council, Ambassador Taiho Kim stood on the observation deck of New Harmony Station, watching construction crews build the headquarters of the Terran Cooperative Network. The station was beautiful, designed by both human and alien architects working together as equals. Below them, ships from 30 different species docked peacefully. Trade routes that had been dead for months were alive again. Communication networks carried messages between distant worlds. The galaxy was healing, but it was healing differently than before. The final membership agreements came in today, reported Minji Park, walking up beside him. She now served as Director of Cooperative Security, managing peacekeeping forces from 12 species. 47 worlds have joined the network. 3 more are requesting membership. What about the old council powers? The Zentari Confederation joined last week. The Vorthan Empire is still debating, but their younger leaders are pushing for membership. The Kellian Federation was actually one of the first to sign up. Taiho smiled. The species that had been most desperate were often the quickest to embrace change. Those who still had some power left were slower to give up their old ways. Any word from the Spiral Arm Alliance? They're still claiming they can rebuild alone. But 3 of their member worlds have secretly applied for network membership. The alliance is falling apart. On the agricultural world of New Bizan, the farms were green again. Kyungwon Lee, now director of the cooperative framework, walked through fields where human and alien workers labored side by side. The new farming methods were even better than before, combining human efficiency with alien innovations. The harvest projections are excellent, reported Supervisor Shanhe. We'll produce enough food for 20 star systems this season. And the distribution network running smoothly. The new cooperation agreements mean we can ship food wherever it's needed, no trade restrictions or political barriers. Kyungwon nodded with satisfaction. Under the old system, trade had been limited by politics and prejudice. Now it was limited only by supply and demand. Species that had barely spoken to each other before were now working as partners. Sir, we have a request from the Vorthine colony on Kepler 442, Chanhe continued. They want to learn our new farming techniques. Approved. Send a technical team next week. This was how the new galaxy worked. Instead of hoarding knowledge or restricting access, the network members shared freely. Everyone benefited when everyone prospered. In space, Yeji Nam supervised the installation of the new galactic communication system, The network used a completely different design than the old council systems. Instead of centralized control, it was distributed across thousands of nodes. No single government could shut it down or control it. Relay Station New Seoul is online, reported her chief engineer, Jawan. That completes the inner rim network. What about coverage for the outer territories? 70% complete. We should have full galactic coverage within 6 months. Yoji looked at the display showing communication flows across the galaxy. Green lines connected worlds that had been isolated for months. Data, messages, and trade orders flowed freely between species that were learning to trust each other again. The old communication network was more centralized, Jawan observed. This new design is more complex but more reliable. That's the point. The old system was designed to give council members control over communication. This system is designed to work for everyone. On New Harmony Station, Dr. Jiwon Beek ran the network's medical division. The refugee crisis was mostly over now. Most displaced aliens had either returned home to rebuilt worlds or found new homes in network space. But the medical cooperation continued. The joint research project with the Zentari is showing promising results, reported Dr. Sang-Min Her, research director. Their regenerative medicine combined with our surgical techniques could revolutionize trauma care. What about the Kellyan bioengineering program? Ahead of schedule. They're sharing their genetic therapy research in exchange for our immunology data. Both sides are learning. This was something that had never happened under the old council system. Different species had guarded their medical knowledge jealously, sharing only what they had to. Now they worked together, and medical science was advancing faster than ever. Dr. Beek, we have a request from Earth Medical Command, Dr. Sang-Min continued. They want to establish a joint alien-human medical academy. Excellent idea. Approve. On Earth, Sahi Choi managed trade relationships that spanned the galaxy. Her office displayed charts showing economic growth that exceeded even the best years under the old council system. Network trade volume is up 400% from pre-collapse levels, she reported to President Chun during their weekly meeting. Species that barely traded before are now major partners. What's driving the growth? Removal of artificial barriers. Under the old system, trade was restricted by politics, prejudice, and bureaucracy. Now it's based purely on mutual benefit. The president studied the charts. Are we dominating these relationships? No, sir. That's the beauty of the new system. Everyone wins. We provide expertise and advanced technology. Our partners provide resources, unique skills, and new perspectives. Nobody is junior or senior. Everyone is equal. This had been the key insight that made the network work. Instead of trying to control other species, humanity had focused on creating systems where everyone could prosper. In the ruins of the old Galactic Council building, Acting Speaker Vel 339 signed the final dissolution papers. The council that had ruled the galaxy for centuries was officially dead? Any regrets? Asked his aide. Vel 339 looked around the empty hall where so many important decisions had been made. Many regrets. But mostly I regret that it took a crisis to teach us wisdom. Will you apply for network membership? My government is debating it, but I think the answer is yes. We can't survive alone, and the network represents our best hope for the future. Outside, construction crews were already dismantling the voting crystal that had once decided the fate of civilizations. It would be recycled into something more useful. Captain Minho Jang piloted his ship New Seoul through space lanes that were busier than they had ever been. The shipping routes that had died during the collapse were now carrying more cargo than ever before. Captain, we're getting a priority message from Vorthen Station 7, reported his communications officer. Minho smiled. Vorthen Station 7 was the same station that Sung-Jin Oh had rescued 8 months ago. It had been rebuilt using network cooperation with human engineering, Zentari materials, and Kellyan design. What do they need? They're requesting regular shipping service. They want to establish a permanent trade relationship. Approved. Add them to our regular route. As the new Soul changed course toward the station, Minho reflected on how much had changed. A year ago, human ships were fleeing alien space. Now they were returning as partners and friends. On New Harmony Station, Ambassador Taiho Kim met with delegates from across the galaxy. But this wasn't a council session where one group could vote to restrict another. This was a partnership meeting where equals discussed common challenges. The piracy problem in Sector 12 is getting worse, reported Admiral Kex 445, the former Vorthan general who now commanded network security forces. We need a coordinated response. Agreed, said Captain Sung Jin-oh, who had been promoted to lead network rescue operations. My ships have responded to 6 attacks this month. What do you recommend? Taiho asked. Joint patrols, Admiral Kex 445 suggested. Human ships for speed and firepower, Zentari ships for sensors, Kellyan ships for boarding operations. Approved. Coordinate with all interested species. This was how problems were solved in the new galaxy. Not by one group imposing its will on others, but by voluntary cooperation between equals. As the meeting ended, Taiho walked to his office and found a message waiting from Earth's president. Taiho, the message began, I wanted you to know that the first class of the new Galactic Diplomatic Academy graduated today. 30 students from 15 different species, all trained in network cooperation principles. They're ready to help build the future we dreamed of. Taiho smiled and composed his reply. The future is looking bright. That evening he stood again on the observation deck, watching ships from dozens of species dock at the station. A year ago, many of these species had been enemies. Some had never spoken to each other. Now they worked together, traded together, and solved problems together. A young human engineer, Soyan, joined him at the viewing window. Sir, do you ever miss the old days? Taiho thought about it. I miss some of the people we left behind. I miss the opportunities we lost. But I don't miss the system that treated us as servants rather than partners. Do you think the aliens learned their lesson? Some did. Others are still learning. But the most important thing is that we learned our lesson too. What lesson is? That walking away from a bad situation isn't defeat? Sometimes it's the only way to create something better. Soyan nodded thoughtfully, and now we have something better. Yes, we have a galaxy where species cooperate instead of compete, where knowledge is shared instead of hoarded, where success is measured by how much everyone prospers, not by how much power you hold over others.